Hi, it's me, Jacqueline. Welcome to my channel. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to my channel and join me at Patreon. Link in the description. Masumi came home to Michelle, which brought a smile to her face. But she saw that Michelle was a little down. "What's wrong, honey?" she asked. "Oh, nothing." "Nothing? I know better. The look on your face and the tone of your voice says something is wrong." "It's nothing really." "So, tell me what nothing is." "I got to thinking about something that you said the night of the party." "What?" "Do you remember saying, 'I'm just thinking of how you would look dressed as a geisha'?" "Sure." "I got curious. I was going to dress in it, but I've only seen you put it on once. And I looked at all the other stuff and gave up." "It's not that hard," she said with a smile. "In fact, that's an idea." "An idea?" "Yeah. Dr. Ruth is having a Halloween costume party. And that may be the ideal costume for you." Michelle slowly got a big smile on her face. "The only thing that we may have a problem with is making you look Japanese. We'll have to work on that." "That would be fun. Think we can pull it off?" "Sure. I think I know of a way to give your eyes a slant, and then with the heavy makeup." "Yes, it should work. But we're going to have a trial run." "Sounds like fun to me." That Saturday, they headed over to a shop that deals costumes, theatrical makeup, etc. They wandered around, looking at various things, and Masumi spotted a costume that she thought she could wear to the party. She didn't say anything to Mike. She wanted it to be a surprise. They talked to one of the girls, told her what they want to do, and she knew just what they wanted. She took them to a display that had eye tabs on it, and she showed them, in a booklet, how to obtain an Oriental look. They took a couple sets of the eye tabs, the booklet, and some clown white makeup. Masumi thought that she had everything else that they needed. When they got home, they headed to the bedroom. Masumi started looking through her things and set a number of items on the table. Mike put on one of his wig caps and sat at their dressing table. Masumi took the booklet and read again on how to use the eye tabs. It showed how Shirley MacLaine was made up for the part of Yoko Mori in the film My Geisha. And Masumi was going to try and follow it, at least to get the Oriental look. She knew how to do the geisha makeup. She carefully applied one end of a eye tabs just behind and just above the corner of Mike's right eye. She then pulled it slightly upwards and over the top of the wig cap, lifting the corner of his eye up, and attached the other end to the wig cap. She looked at it carefully and readjusted it a little. She then did the left eye and stood back to get a good look. Mike said, "Well, take a look." He turned around and looked in the mirror and said, "It looks good. But it's a little uncomfortable. Get used to it, lover. It's what we have to do to get you looking like a geisha. You're the boss. You know it. Turn back around and let's try some makeup." He spun back around and she kissed him. She then thinned his eyebrows a little and used some additional tabs to lift them. Then she started with the clown white and covered his face, being sure to leave a line of bare skin around where the wig would be. She then outlined his eyes in heavy black and worked it to give them a more Oriental look. Then she did his eyebrows in black. The crowning touch was the bright red lipstick right in the center of his lips. This was done to emphasize delicacy, femininity, and the desired miniature effect. She stood back, looked, and smiled a little. As she walked to her closet, as she told him to not look. She was back quickly with her geisha wig. She had to adjust it to fit his head, but it did. She reworked it a little to hide the eye tabs and other tape. Again, she stood back and looked at it with a critical eye. And again she smiled and told Mike to have a look. Mike turned and looked in the mirror. There looking at him was a geisha. Masumi had done what he thought was a good job. Anne said, "It really looks great, babe." "It's okay. It still needs some work. You too much of a perfectionist." "Only the best for you, love." "Want to try the kimono?" "You have to ask. And it's not as hard as you think. And you can learn some new words, too. First, it's best if you put on the white tabi socks. If you don't and you're dressing yourself, it could be hard to do once you have the kimono and belts on. Then comes the slips or jubin and the white collar, called an arisagata. Now, when you put the kimono on, be sure that the seam is centered in the back. And always overlap the left over the right side. So, Mike started by putting on the socks and Masumi helped him with the slips and collar. She went to the closet and came back with her red and white kimono and helped him slip it on. He forgot and crossed right over left. She stomped her foot and said, "No, it's left over right unless you're dead." He changed it quickly and said, "It's too long." "No, we'll take care of that with the obi." She carefully adjusted the collar and the kimono. She then said, "Now the obi." Actually, there are two of them for this kimono. First, we need to adjust the kimono until it's just at your ankles. She carefully folded the material until it fell right at his ankles, and told him to hold it there while she wrapped the koshihimo belt just below the excess fabric. This belt starts in the front, wraps around the back, and is tied in the front. After she tied the belt, she fussed around, so the fabric fell just right, and then folded the excess kimono material down over the belt. And finally, we wrapped the datejime belt around you, covering the koshihimo, and tie it in front. See, that wasn't bad, was it? Not really. Can I see? Not until you're wearing the geta sandals. She walked back to the closed and came back with a pair of getas. She set them on the floor, and he slipped his feet into them. Can I see now? Take a look. He turned and looked in the full-length mirror. He just stared. Well, she finally asked. I love the look. You did a fantastic job. Like I said, it still needs some work. But between now and the party we'll get it. He did look like a geisha, but it looked a little too faked for Masumi's liking. When Mike was Michelle, he looked like a girl, but right now something just wasn't right. You know, she continued, we can call you Michelle when you look like a Western girl. We need a Japanese name for you. Any ideas? Well, since I'm really Mike, and you and your sister named my female side Michelle, it should probably start with an M. How about Midori, or Michi, or Mayuko, or the best one Masumi? You can't have my name, silly. I like Midori, but I also like Miyuki. Midori or Miyuki? Midori or Miyuki? You get to pick this one. I really do like Miyuki. Dizo Yoroshiku, Miyuki. Nice to meet you, Miyuki. Dizo Yoroshiku, Masumi. I Shidarawa. Nice to meet you, Masumi. I love you. I love you too. Masumi took a few digital pictures of Miyuki so that she could try and figure out what needed to be done to make Miyuki look better. She was pretty, just like Michelle was, but something was just not right. Halloween. Over the next few weeks, Masumi worked on Mike's geisha look. But she still wasn't happy. So, she emailed a copy of one of the photos to her sister, Sachiko, to see if she could spot the problem. It wasn't long before Sachiko emailed her back and said, "Look at the eyes. They are slanted too much, and the eyebrows need to be thinner." Masumi studied the picture some more and finally had to agree with Sachiko. So, that night when she did Miyuki's makeup, she began to slowly thin his eyebrows and adjusted the eye taps. That was it. Now, Miyuki looked like a proper Japanese geisha. Try as he might, Mike couldn't get Masumi to tell him who she was going to the party as. She knew he was a lover of the old-time Western movies and heroes, and she was going as one of his favorites. The party was on a Saturday night, and Masumi helped Mike transform into Miyuki, though he didn't need much help, except with the makeup. And by now she had his eyebrows as thin as a real girl's. When Masumi was done, he was a proper geisha. She made him go into the living room while she got ready. It was about half an hour later when she came into the room. Mike heard a jingling and couldn't figure out what it was. He looked over to where she was standing and smiled from ear to ear. There stood Masumi as one of his favorite Western characters, the Lone Ranger. Spurs and all. Perhaps a bit shorter than the original, but still the Lone Ranger. She said, with a real fake Western drawl, "Okay, partner, let's get these doggies moving. You're really something else. No wonder I love you so much. If I wouldn't ruin my makeup, I'd kiss you. You can do as much of that after we get back to the ranch, partner." They headed out the door and into the car. Masumi was going to drive, as Miyuki couldn't drive wearing geta sandals. As they pulled out, they headed west, and Dr. Ruth lived north of them. Miyuki said, "You're going the wrong way." "No, I'm going the right way." Dr. Ruth lives north of here. I know. But where we're going first is west of here. West of here. The only people that we know that live west of here are my parents. My parents. Uh-huh. No. We can't go there. Yes, we can. I've been talking to Mom about the Halloween party and what we're wearing. And she wanted to see us. But Dad will be there, not to mention my brother and sister. By the time we get there, she'll have them all prepared. Oh man, why didn't you tell me? Would you have gone? No way. Well, that should answer your question. Miyuki just looked out the window as all the familiar landmarks went by. The closer they got, the more his stomach churned. He was mad at Masumi for pulling the stunt. Well, as mad as he could get at her, which wasn't much. As they turned down his parents' street, he took a deep breath and looked at Masumi. Almost there, lover, Masumi said, with a smile that could melt butter. I know. They pulled in the driveway. Masumi shut off the car, got out, went around to the passenger side, and opened the door. She offered her hand to Miyuki. Miyuki just sat there and looked at her. Come on, love. Your mom knows that you crossdress, so she won't be too surprised. And by now the rest of the family will know that you're going to the party as a geisha. And they'll be interested in how you look. Miyuki took Masumi's hand and exited the car. Again, Miyuki took a deep breath and started up the walk, his getas clicking on the concrete. He saw his mother looking out the window of the door, and the front porch light was on. As they walked up on the porch, the door opened, and there stood his family, along with his brother's girlfriend, Harley. As they got close to the door, he could see the look of utter amazement on his mother's face. Not to mention his dad standing there with his mouth wide open. His brother's eyes were as big as saucers. And the two girls, his sister and Harley, were just grinning. Everyone just stood there, for a few moments, looking at each other. His mother finally broke the silence by says, "Don't just stand there. Come in." Miyuki removed her getas and left them by the door. And the five moved away from the threshold and allowed Masumi and Miyuki to come in and close the door. Everyone migrated to the living room, where Miyuki became the center of attention. The two girls felt the kimono and commented about how soft and silky it felt, and wanted to know about wearing it. His sister had worn one at the wedding, but not as elaborate as this one. His brother just couldn't say anything, which was unusual for him. His dad just looked at him, shaking his head. His mother joined the two girls in asking about the kimono. Finally, his mom, in front of everyone, said, "Masumi said that you were very pretty when you dressed, but I had no idea." Miyuki looked at his mom in shock. Maybe he was the only one that caught the comment. But maybe not. The room got a little quiet. "Mom, can I talk to you?" Miyuki asked. "Sure, honey." And he followed her into the kitchen. She turned and looked at him and said, "Mrs. Matsushita just didn't do you justice when she said you were pretty when you were dressed as a girl. You do make a very pretty girl." "Thanks. I think." "Mom, what did Dad say when you told him that I was going to this party as a girl?" "Well, you know your father." He raised his left eyebrow and said, "As a girl, huh? I bet he won't look good. But it's Halloween. And let it go at that. It's going to be interesting to see what he tells you after we leave." "I know. But your brother is the one that really threw me when he couldn't say anything. I figured that he would be all over you, like he normally is." "Me too. Paul usually can't wait to put a dig in. And it was almost worth it to see the look on his face. But I'm really worried as to what Dad is going to say, especially after your comment. I'll handle your father. So, don't you worry about him." "How much has Masumi told you?" "Everything." "Everything?" "Yes. We had a nice long mother-in-law daughter-in-law talk a few weeks ago, and she told me everything about that first trip to Japan and the shopping trip. And then when you were introduced to Mr. Matsushita. And you don't have a problem with this?" "No, honey. Like I told you when we were in Japan, I've kind of known about this side of you for a long time. And if it makes you happy, then it makes me happy. And it appears to make Masumi happy, and that's important also. We'd better get back to the others." "Thanks, Mom. I really love you guys. Even Paul. They walked back into the living room, and Mrs. Gifford said to Masumi, "We've all but ignored you, making such a fuss over Mike. I mean Miyuki. But your costume is really great too." And, knowing how Mike loves the old Western movies, I bet he was surprised. Yes, he was. And, thank you for the compliment. You know we had better get going, or we're going to be late for the party. Please subscribe for the next part and visit my Patreon page for early access.